Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan Miller Report, nuclear talks between six world powers and Iran have extended into Wednesday. We have a full report. In Nigeria's election, former military ruler and dictator Muhammad Buhari has become the first opposition candidate to win a presidential election in Nigeria. We have the latest on the elections in Nigeria, as well tonight as the elections over in the UK, where more than 100 company leaders have now declared support for conservative-led David Cameron as he runs for a second term as Prime Minister in the UK. In international business news, EU milk quotas have been scrapped after more than 3 decades. In D.C. news, President Obama has approved the delivery of a dozen F-16 aircraft to the likes of Egypt, and Obama offers commentations to 22 of 209,155 prisoners. We got all those stories and much more D.C. news, plus Corey Evan.
Thank you, Jay. Well, so much for the defense never rests. Sarnaev's defense has. A Minnesota professor gets busted for smuggling ivory. Wow. Way to shame your undergrads. Radio Shack's co-brand with Sprint is sprinting ahead. Let's hope it doesn't end up in a run by Fruiting Jay. Today's lawsuits show us all that goes wrong with big government. And I recap the bottom 10 Justin Bieber roast jokes. Yes, I said Bieber. I know his name is Beaver, but he doesn't deserve it. But at any rate, that's all coming up in this edition of your conservative news source. The Evan Miller Report starts now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Tuesday, March the 31st, 2015. Can you believe it, folks? The last day of March already, ladies and gentlemen. Hard to believe it's April the 1st tomorrow. Springtime is close in hand, isn't it, Corey?
And so are the April Fool's jokes.
Yeah,
I bet some of your co-workers are going to deliver them. Yes, absolutely.
Yep, and as Corey Evan mentioned, he had to bring the Justin Bieber jokes on the report tonight. Not only did I have to watch it on the KTLA 5 morning show with Sam Rubin this morning, but now I have to listen to my co-host go on and on and on about this load of Bieber.
Sorry about that, but I just feel it's one of those things that deserve to be covered because, well, we got to get our own back on the Beaver for getting his own on us. I mean, the guy refuses to become an American, so
send him back to Canada where he belongs. That's wild.
Good idea.
All right, well, let's leave the jokes till later because we got serious news to cover tonight, and we start off in Iran tonight, where nuclear talks between six world powers and that country will continue into Wednesday, according to U.S. officials. The State Department said that, quote, enough progress had been made to merit working through a midnight deadline. But according to spokeswoman and BS artist at the State Department, Maria Harf, she added that, quote, several difficult issues still remained. Sounds like typical State Department BS from the load of Harf. Back to the story, though. World powers want to restrict Iran's nuclear program in return for relief from crippling sanctions. Earlier, there were suggestions that a general statement would be released focusing on points of agreement, which would be enough to allow for a new phase of talks on a comprehensive deal. But there is still no sign that the most contentious issues had been resolved. The negotiations will end when solutions have been found, said Iranian negotiator Hamid Benjid. We are not watching the clock. The so-called P5+1, the U.S., UK, France, China, and Russia, plus Germany, are seeking to ensure Iran could not assemble a nuclear weapon in less than a year. Foreign ministers met several times at Luzerne bin Riyadh Palace Hotel on Tuesday morning in a high-level push to meet the staff-imposed deadline to agree a political framework agreement by the end of the day. Russia's top diplomat Sergei Lavrov announced that the prospects were very good and promising and said he was returning to the talks after leaving for another engagement on Monday. According to the BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher, who is at the talks, she says that the deadline extensifies the difficulty of reaching agreement on some of the outstanding issues, but also the prospect of achieving some kind of deal. Officials told the AP news agency that they were planning to issue a framework understanding accompanied by documents outlining more technical details. This will be enough for all parties to continue negotiations in a new phase aimed at achieving a comprehensive accord by the 30th of June, according to one of the BBC's correspondents. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've said this many a times on this program. We make a deal with Iran, we lose out big time. As a country, we stop immediately being the most powerful country in the world, and we stop having any influence in other countries in the way they talk if this deal is passed in Iran. And that's just an editorial opinion from your humble journalist tonight. As I speak to you tonight, I am concerned about this deal. If this deal is passed, I do sense some bad news happening here in America. President Obama may think this will be the highlight of his presidency, but I believe it will come back to bite him. And it may not be right away, but I do believe if it is passed, we will see some damage done to relations between the United States and the Middle East. Not that we had great relations to begin with the Middle East. The only one we had good relations with was Israel, and President Obama has done a pretty good job of butchering up that relationship with the likes of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has stood up against this Iranian deal, and God bless that man for standing up against it. All right, enough of my editorial comments, but over to our next story tonight, where over in Nigeria, former military ruler and dictator Muhammad Buhari has become the first opposition candidate to win a presidential election in Nigeria. Incumbent Goodluck Jonathan telephoned General Buhari on Tuesday night to congratulate him and concede defeat. Unofficial voting tallies put General Buhari more than 2 million votes ahead of his rival. Observers have generally praised the election, though there have been some allegations of voter fraud. A spokesperson for General Buhari's All Progressive Congress, or APC party, praised Mr. Jonathan, saying, quote, "He will remain a hero for this move. The tension will go down dramatically." General Buhari's supporters took to the streets in APC strongholds, including the northern cities of Kano and Kaduna, to sing and dance in celebration. The APC issued a statement after the result was announced, calling for calm, somber celebrations and warning supporters not to attack opponents. "He or she is not with me, whoever does that," the new president said. General Buhari's victory is a hugely significant moment in Nigeria's turbulent history. Never before has a sitting president been defeated in an election. Since independence from Britain back in 1960, there have been numerous coups, and most elections have been rigged in Nigeria. There was one close election. There may be many voters who are not pleased with this outcome, but the whole process is a sign that democracy is deepening in Nigeria, say some. The poll has once again brought to surface dangerous religious and regional differences, and there is still a threat of violence in the country. The man who has been voted out, Goodluck Jonathan, has played what some people say is a huge part in trying to prevent that. He made the phone call, and when there would no doubt have been some in his camp who have digged their heels in, says Will Ross, the BBC's Nigerian correspondent, who is in Abuja right now. The former military ruler / dictator managed to win more than 25% of votes in 24 states, meaning he avoided the possibility of a runoff with Mr. Jonathan. He dominated the country's northwestern states, which have suffered mostly from attacks by the Danish militant group Boko Haram. In Borno State, one of the most affected by Danish violence, General Buhari won by 94% of the vote. And staying with politics, at least in Europe that is, more than 100 company leaders have declared support for a conservative-led government in a letter published in the Daily Telegraph late tonight. Signatories, including former Dragon's Den star Duncan Batty-backed Tory plans to lower corporation tax to 20%, which came into force on Wednesday. And for those of you who don't know what the Tory party is, that would be the Conservative-led party in the UK. Meanwhile, the Socialist Labour Party, which dismissed the letter, would use the proceeds from cut to lower business rates for small firms. It also set to pledge to outlaw exploitative zero-hours contracts. According to the BBC's political correspondent Chris Mason, he says the letter to the Telegraph was a quote, significant intervention from the business leaders with 36 days to go before the general election. Other business chiefs to sign the Telegraph letter include BP Chief Executive Bob Dudley, Prudential boss Tinjit Thiem, Arcadia Retail Group head Sir Philip Green, and Nick Robertson, Chief Executive of ASOS. No relation from Nick Robertson to the Nick Robertson who works for the BBC as their political correspondent, I should add, for those of you listening over in the UK, not to be confused. YouGov's first polling following Sunday's 4% Labour lead had the Conservative and Labour level pegging on 35%, and the TNS had the Conservatives 1 point ahead of Labour, 33 to 32, with the independent UKIP party on 16%, their highest figure in a campaign poll so far. Another ComRes poll of 40 Labour seats in Scotland confirmed other national polls with a 19% swing. Beg your pardon, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, let's try that. Okay, pardon me. Back to the story. ComRes had Labour on 46 and YouGov on 45, with Conservatives hovering around their 2010 share of 34%. ComRes represent a 5.5% swing to Labour and YouGov a swing of 4%. The Lib Dem Party were down from 22 in 2010 to 8%. UKIP has continued to underperform in London with an 8 to 9%, and the Greens will be disappointed that they were on 4% in both polls in a city where they have performed better than average in the past. That's according to recent polling. Stay with the Evan Miller Report and the SHR Media Network for more on the UK elections. At this time, we, of course, SHR Media will be the home to the ITV Leaders Debates this Thursday at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific, right here on SHR Media. So we hope you join us and stay tuned for a message up on the SHR Media website and, of course, our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. And, of course, I will be anchoring the coverage for the ITV Leaders Debates, the only debate where Prime Minister David Cameron and Labour MP Ed Miliband will be debating head-to-head this election cycle. So we hope you stay tuned to that. All right, folks, I'll be back in a moment with some international business, including EU milk quotas being scrapped after more than 3 decades. But first, we send it over to Corey Evan up in Los Angeles, and he has the rest of the day's national news here in America. Corey, take it away.
Consider it taken. The defense rested its case in the trial of accused Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev today after calling only 4 witnesses over the course of 2 days. The brief defense was not surprising considering Mr. Tsarnaev's lawyers already admitted their client's guilt in opening statements, according to Christian Science Monitor. But the abrupt conclusion, after examining only a few witnesses, brought to a sudden end the first phase of the trial that had featured 92 witnesses from the prosecution over 14 days. There we are. The 18-person jury will now confer and determine if Tsarnaev is guilty or not of the 30 charges he faces. If he's found guilty, the trial will move to the second phase, where the same jury will hear arguments over whether he should receive the death sentence or life in prison, which I think would be too very little to give him life in prison. But at any rate, after finishing the examination of their final witness, FBI fingerprint analyst Elena Graff, defense attorney Tim Watkins,
announced that they would be calling no more witnesses. Judge George O'Toole called for a short recess, and the jury filed out of the room. Tsarnaev huddled with his lawyers for a few moments while the room emptied, his lead attorney, Judy Clark, patting him on the back, and was then escorted from the room. After several hours of breaks and formal sidebars, the jury finally returned to receive their instructions. The court will be in recess until next Monday, when the jury will hear closing statements from both sides and final instructions from George O'Toole and begin their deliberations. Testimony in the Tsarnaev trial has fluctuated from raw and emotional to cold and analytical. The prosecution rested its case yesterday morning after bringing several jurors to tears with wrenching medical testimony of the injuries to three victims of the bombings, including an 8-year-old boy. More than 260 people were also injured during the April 2013 attack. And moving on to one from the AP, a philosophy professor at St. Cloud State University in Minneapolis is accused of conspiring to smuggle rhinoceros horns and elephant ivory out of the U.S. and into China.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Yiwei Zheng was indicted by a federal grand jury on charges including smuggling and making a false statement to agents. The Star Tribune reports Zheng was arrested Tuesday by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agents in St. Cloud. Zheng appeared in court, surrendered his passport, and was released on $25,000 unsecured bond. The indictment alleges Zheng conspired with two unnamed co-conspirators in a scheme that ran from 2006 to 2011. According to the indictment, the black rhinoceros is listed as an endangered species, and international trade in elephant ivory is largely banned. A university spokesman said he can't comment due to the investigation. And that's just their way of trying not to admit to it, but rather plead the fifth. But that's just me. Two major California newspapers say they've received emails from a person claiming responsibility for a woman's abduction, including one demanding that police apologize to the woman for calling it a hoax. The San Francisco Chronicle reported Tuesday the anonymous person wrote that Denise Huskin's ordeal last week was real and her name should be cleared. One lengthy email said the kidnappers used plastic squirt guns with strobe flashlights duct taped to them to mimic firearms when they broke into Huskin's Vallejo home in the early hours of March 23rd. Huskin's live-in boyfriend, Aaron Quinn, reported the abduction that afternoon, telling police the kidnappers demanded an $8,500 ransom. Quinn's lawyers have said he awoke to a bright light in his face and two kidnappers bound and drugged him. The email alleges the kidnappers put Huskins in the trunk of Quinn's car and drove off. The car was later found abandoned. Quinn's lawyers have said Huskins turned up safe 2 days later in her hometown of Huntington Beach, where she says she was dropped off. She showed up just hours before the alleged ransom was due. Later that day, Vallejo police said at a news conference that the alleged kidnapping was a hoax. Police have since declined to comment, other than to say they continue to investigate. As in, you've got questions, we don't got answers. Attorneys for Quinn and Huskins maintain the kidnapping was real. The emails say the crew chose $8,500 for the ransom because it's less than $10,000, the amount at which cash withdrawals must be reported to the federal government. The LA Times also reported it received an anonymous email about the case. The sender wrote, quote, "The Mar Island kidnapping was a training mission to test means and methods that will be used on higher net worth targets." The FBI has declined to comment on the emails, but a spokeswoman said the agency is aware of them. None of the letters are signed, and they appear to come from dummy accounts with names like HuskinsKidnapping@hotmail.com. An email sent to that address by the AP was not returned. The emails to the Chronicle refer to car thefts and home burglaries that the senders say his group committed. In one, the writer says the group turned to kidnapping for ransom because they did not want to stay thieves or criminals forever. Huskin's attorney, Douglas Rappaport, said the emails contained details that only Denise, Aaron, and kidnappers would know. Yeah, right. I don't buy that for a second, ladies and gentlemen. But moving on to another one from California. A shotgun-wielding California man ambushed the mother of his kids at work, fatally blasting her in the chest before he killed himself, authorities said. Not to get into gun control or anything, but it's always disgusting to hear these crimes committed. Anyway, from the New York Daily News, Moa Ning was battling the women over custody of their 5 children before he busted through the door of a medical office on Tuesday morning and opened fire, Fresno PD Deputy Chief Pat Farmer told reporters. Terrified patients and workers told cops they heard 2 or 3 shots and then a pause before a final blast. SWAT team members raced to the office following a 911 call at 10:52 a.m. They had at first suspected an active shooter and possible hostage situation. Instead, they found the bloodied bodies of Neng and his victim. It's not immediately clear whether the couple was married, but the two had grown estranged and were living apart, Mr. Farmer said. Fresno cops had previously arrested Ning following a domestic dispute with the woman 11 years prior, authorities said. Co-workers told cops the woman was worried about a May court date in an ongoing custody battle with the volatile dad. Yeah, I know, yeah.
Oh, why don't you just leave the drama at home? Come on, we have all this stuff on Law and Order already. Why do we have to put it in real life?
I thought it was already all over Judge Judy.
So says the king of lawsuits across America. What do you think keeps you going every day?
Exactly. 8 patients and 8 workers were inside when Ning stormed the office building, which houses Sang Pediatrics and Eye Medical Center. SWAT team members found a patient and her 3 kids cowering inside. Others fled as the shooting began. Right, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. I will post up the rest of that article on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report, because, quite honestly, it is a bit scary to read on there. And now, Jay, we're getting ready to take aim at Jeb Bush.
Oh, boy. What you got in the pick on Bush file today?
Today, Politico tells me a group of leading New Hampshire conservatives and libertarians are preparing to stage their own caucus 3 months before the state's first-in-the-nation primary and then unify behind the winner. Sick of the string of centrist GOPers who have dominated the state's primary in recent years, including John Evangelical-dominated Iowa caucuses, and socially conservative South Carolina. They plan to choose among a slate of candidates likely to include Scott Walker, Ted Cruz, we've heard that name before, and Rand Paul at their own presidential caucus in October, according to activists involved. Participants will agree to unify around the winner of the caucus in the hopes of beating Bush and other perceived moderates in the actual primary. The scheme emerges from years of simmering discontent within the state Republican Party that now threatens to spill over into presidential politics and upset the plans of the National Party, which has condensed its primary schedule and drastically cut the number of debates in order to hasten consolidation around an establishment nominee. One of its organizers, Tea Party activist Jack Kimball, briefly ascended to the state party's chairmanship in 2011 before being ousted by the forces of the establishment, led by all 5 top Republican elected officials in New Hampshire. Another, Andrew Hemingway, was a libertarian candidate for governor last year who lost the nomination fight to establishment favorite Walt Havenstein. Other organizers said that last year's nominations of Havenstein and Scott Brown, who both lost in the general election, was the last straw. The state party was then further roiled in December when the new Republican Party majority in the House selected Bill O'Brien as their choice for speaker, but another Republican, Sean Jasper, seized the speakership with the help of Democrats and was subsequently censured by his own party. The idea for the caucus emerged in the wake of the November midterms from a series of brainstorming sessions held by demoralized grassroots activists determined to assert libertarian, conservative, and Tea Party influence, Jay. Earlier this month, the effort's organizers invited the leaders of roughly 24 right-leaning political groups to an office space in Concord to pitch them on their plan to form a coalition of libertarians and conservatives, settle on a minimum threshold for conservative credentials, invite presidential candidates who pass the bar, and commit ahead of time to rally behind the winner of a caucus-like process tentatively scheduled for October. Oh man, that's going to be one to hear about around Halloween. It's going to be scary.
Scary? It ain't going to be scary. If we could roast Jeb Bush better than we did Justin Bieber, the country would be in so much better shape, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's who I'm hoping to scare here.
Very good. Thank you very much, Corey. And since Corey Evan went on with the DC news today, I'll go ahead and continue to do the same on my end and continue on with where Marco Rubio is closing in on an unexpected announcement that he will run for president. He said today said yesterday, that he is planning a political event in 2 weeks in Miami, Florida, to announce his 2016 plans. The first-term Republican from Florida appearing on Fox News did not explicitly say he is running for the White House, but instead telling would-be supporters to go to his website and reserve tickets for the rally. I know what this is. This is all about fundraising. He wants to see if he can get the most money in before Ted Cruz. It's typical money. He's being a capitalist. You got to give him that. I'm not saying I'm supporting him, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying he's playing smart with the first decisions here. Rubio said on Fox News, quote, "I will announce on April the 13th what I'm going to do next in terms of running for president or the U.S. Senate." Rubio has said he would not run for both offices on the 2016 ballots, and his term has been moving ahead as though it would be putting together a White House bid, including donors who had helped previous presidential nominees collect tens of millions of dollars. But Rubio faces steep challenges to the nomination, including one from his one-time mentor, as Corey mentioned, the aforementioned Florida Governor Jeb Bush. Rubio could face as many as 20 other rivals for the GOP nomination. You'll have to tune in on April 13th, Rubio said during his appearance on Fox News, a favorite of the GOP presidential hopefuls on the network. Rubio plans to sell a chance, as we said, to win tickets to his campaign kickoff for $3.05, a nod to Miami's 305 area code. It is also a way for the nascent campaign to collect contact information from everyone who wants to be in the audience that day, including low-dollar donors. A site for the event has still not been finalized, and Rubio's senior aides plan to visit the Miami area today to scout options. Well, I certainly hope the option is to take out an insurance policy if Jeb Bush ends up winning the presidency, you big dopes. Sorry,
No better than Hillary Clinton, eh?
Well, I don't know. She ain't looking too appetizing either. Not to say there's not many people on the presidential list, list of people who want to run that is looking too appeasing right now. And that does include Ted Cruz, ladies and gentlemen, who I have renamed until further notice Mr. Common Core. Unfortunate, but that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Common Core. All right. I don't often talk about competitions, as Corey puts it, on some other radio program, but this one sort of hit my desk today. Conservative radio talk show host and competitor to yours truly, correspondent and Fox News contributor Laura Ingraham is planning to launch a new conservative news and opinion website. Sources with knowledge of her plans told the On Media blog today. One source says that Neil Murrow, the political reporter who had resigned from the Daily Caller this week, will serve as the site's editor, though that could not immediately be confirmed. Neither Ingraham nor Murrow responded to a request for comment today. Ingram's new site will likely reflect on the, quote, and no offense to our friends over at Pundit Press, the pundit's conservative ideology, and champion her pet causes, the sources say. Ingraham has been an outspoken opponent of immigration reform, or as we just like to call it for what it is here on the Evan Miller Report, amnesty, and has dedicated herself to getting anti-amnesty candidates into office. In 2014, she helped turn Dave Brandt into a conservative sensation, enabling his stunning upset over House Majority Leader and BS artist at the time, Eric Cantor. She will have a friend in Murrow on this front. In 2012, Murrow gained notoriety when he shouted a question at Obama in the middle of a Rose Garden announcement about changes to the immigration policy, saying, quote, "Why do you favor foreigners over Americans?" Murrow yelled earlier this year while questioning Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid, who will be resigning his Senate post in 2016, about immigration policy. He even spelled the word amnesty out for him. And I'm not going to go ahead and spell amnesty out on the air because it would offend the audience, because I believe the audience knows how to spell it, unless Corey Evan likes to do a little Wheel of Fortune. Would you like to buy a vowel core?
A for asinine.
Ah, very good. See, my co-host always catches on. The news site Lodge Date will join already crowded field of conservative political websites from the likes of Breitbart and the Washington Free Beacon to older outlets like National Review and the Weekly Standard. All right, folks, we're up against a break here on the program, but when we come back on the program, some more serious D.C. news tonight, including President Obama approving the delivery of a dozen F-16 aircraft to Egypt. We got more on that story. Obama offering commutations to 22 of 209,155 prisoners. We got more on that story. Obama vetoes Republican bid to block union election rules. You see a trend going on here, folks. It's all about Obama today, about what he is and what he is not doing, or what he's doing and how it's ruining America. All that plus Corey Evans.
Thank you, Jake. This is 1-788. Iran's oil dealings and Radio Shack's attempts to sprint back from bankruptcy are in business. Over.
It's hazing whistleblowers and sexual predators, and representing the big government, hazing whistleblowers and the predators, all in that order. Nuts. Big government. And, well, Zayn's new solo single is gonna need a new home after he quit One Direction. His new single got taken down. I'll cover that, as well as the bottom 10 Justin Bieber jokes of the Comedy Central roast after the break on the Evan Miller Report. You're listening to SHR Media, and Jay is reaching for that pinball hammer.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Radio.
Pack news. Pack news.
Radio.
Pack news. Pack news.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What's up, everyone? Corey Evan here from the SHR Weekender. I describe the Weekender as a news magazine.
You might describe it as business in the front, party in the back. I bring you the big stories of the week, the ones that matter, and help you make sense of them. But I also bring you lots of fun stories, too. That's because I know you've got weekend plans. Besides, I love doing features. I read the classifieds. I take public figures for a spin. And who else do you know who reads a game show news minute? Thought so. That's what I bring you every Saturday at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific on shrmedia.com. I'll see you on the Weekender.
Welcome back to the Evan Miller Report here on the SHR Media Network and Pundit Press Radio. I'm Jason Miller. EU milk quotas have been scrapped after more than 3 decades of efforts to prevent overproduction. This part of the international business news. Corey Evan in a moment with the national business news. The system is ending to allow EU dairy businesses to compete with international rivals in supplying fast-growing markets in Asia and Africa. The Irish Republic, the Netherlands, and Germany are all expected to increase production sharply. UK farmers have said it could lead to further falls in the price they receive for milk. EU Commissioner for Horticulture and Rural Development, Phil Hogan, said the ending of quotas was both a challenge and an opportunity for the EU. He said, quote, "It's a challenge because an entire generation of dairy farms will have to live under the completely new circumstances and volatility will surely accompany them along the road," he said. But it certainly is an opportunity in terms of growth and jobs. The National Farms Union, NFU, urged all countries to act responsibly and collectively and said the lifting of quotas could mean fresh price falls for English and Welsh farmers when it comes to milk, who have operated within the system for the past 15 years. And now let's go ahead and send it over to my colleague up in Los Angeles, Corey Evan, and he has today's closing bell.
Thank you, Jay. And yesterday's gains were easy come, easy go, as I like to say. The Dow was down 200 points at 17,776. The NASDAQ closes at 4,900, having lost 46 points, and the S&P 500 lost 18 to close at 2067. Not a good day on the markets, ladies and gentlemen, but thankfully I have other stories to cover. Oil fell for a third straight session on Tuesday, according to Reuters, with Brent crude tumbling 12% for the month as world powers entered into intense negotiations with Iran for a nuclear deal that could bring more of its oil to an oversupplied market. The tumble was proof of the hurdles oil faced in establishing a bottom for prices since the sell-off that began in June on worries of a supply glut. A midnight deadline at the talks in Lausanne, Switzerland. Brent oil settled down $1.18 or 2.1% at $55.11 a barrel after falling to $54.72 during the session. U.S. crude finished down $1.08 or 2.2% at $47.60 off its earlier low at $47.28. In the past 3 sessions, oil lost more than 7% on heightened fears that a nuclear deal for Iran would raise the global glut in crude. U.S. crude inventories were expected to have hit record highs for a 12th straight week after a build of 5.2 million barrels last week. This according to the American Petroleum Institute. Official stockpile data is due on Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. White House spokesman Josh Earnest aka the BS artist, said the U.S. was willing to continue talks beyond Tuesday to reach the interim agreement, but stressed that discussions had to be productive. Define productive, Mr. Earnest. In an attempt to attract more household...
Me.
Thank you very much.
Enough for you?
Yes, plenty. In an attempt to attract more household goods shoppers, retail giant Amazon has unveiled a device that can place orders to replenish items such as washing powder and razors. The dash button can be attached to appliances around the home and, when pushed, processes a delivery request. The service will only be available...
Toilets, does it do that too? I heard a rumor on the morning news this morning that there's a toilet unclogger.
That's plausible. It's not confirmed or busted on my end. The service will only be available to users of Amazon's premium subscription service, Prime. The tech giant has recently focused on speeding up its ordering processes. Yeah, I know, Jay. Exciting. Prime Now, which guarantees 1-hour delivery on essential daily items, is available in 4 U.S. cities, and the company has also been trialing deliveries by drone. On Monday, the firm launched Amazon Home Services, which allows customers to order professional services such as a handyman or computer technician. Yeah, I need one on my end to make sure that my computer starts running properly. And a plan to salvage Radio Shack by co-branding most of its 1,740 surviving stores with cellular phone provider Sprint earned U.S. bankruptcy court approval on Tuesday, ending 4 days of contested court hearings. The stores are what survived of more than 4,000 outlets after Radio Shack went bankrupt in February. Founded in 1921, the chain was a go-to retailer for electronics before becoming increasingly irrelevant in the digital age. Quite ironic, I think, but at any rate. Judge Brendan Shannon in Delaware Bankruptcy Court approved a sale of the stores to the Standard General Hedge Fund, which plans to keep most of them open under a deal in which Sprint will occupy 1/3 of each space. The sale could preserve about 7,500 jobs and allow Radio Shack to stay in business, a big challenge for retailers who file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The deal had been in doubt when Radio Shack's largest lender, Salus Capital Partners, on Friday said it would make a more lucrative bid over the weekend. The bid never came, but Salus still fought the proposed Standard General deal, alleging this week that the auction was a sham in which Radio Shack chose Standard General despite Salus's better $271 million all-cash offer. Radio Shack insisted that Standard General's bid was worth $56 million more than Salus's, even though most of it would be paid in the form of debt forgiveness, rather than cash. Time was of the essence, with Radio Shack saying it needed to finalize a deal by Wednesday to avoid paying April rent. Just like them to try and get out of another month's rent because pretty much not enough people come in there to justify it these days, Jay.
Yep, certainly right, Corey. Radio Shack, one of those old places where you could get old radios. Now everyone's listening to their radio on their iPhones these days, so who needs an old clock radio anyway? So, no wonder people don't stop in the old Radio Shack. And of course, I blame it on Radio Shack's affiliation with Dish Network.
Yeah, I know, right?
Alright, that's Corey Evan. He had the business news. He'll be back with lawsuits across America. An extended version tonight, I believe, because of last night's extension of our guest that we had on, Charles Johnson, last night. And by the way, folks, an update on that story. Charles Johnson has not yet released that name as he had said he was going to yet. I don't know why, but we at the Evan Miller Report are awaiting that name to be released, and the Evan Miller Report is still trying to reach Alan West over at the National Center for Policy Analysis, and we will keep you up to date if he does contact us and wants to come on to defend himself regarding that sexual allegations story that was put out by the likes of Charles C. Johnson's Got News website. All right, moving on to some serious D.C. news. We got the buzz D.C. news out of the way. Here's the serious stuff in brief. U.S. President, just call him President Obama. We already know he's the President of the U.S. What am I saying? President Obama has approved the delivery of a dozen F-16 aircraft to Egypt has been frozen after a military-led takeover. The White House said Obama told Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi by phone on Tuesday that a 2013 freeze would now be lifted. The move comes as Egypt plays a key role in the Arab offensive against Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen and engages in the fight against the Danish state group in Libya. For opponents of the war on drugs, a group that seems to be growing, and those who think the U.S. incarcerates too many people, Tuesday brought some good news and some bad news. The good news, President Obama's announced that he's issuing clemency to 22 individuals. They all share convictions of, guess what, Cor? Drug offenses from the city of marijuana.
Yet another one to add to that stinking pile of nonsense.
Yes. 8 would have died in prison if not for clemency. The bad news, as the Huffington Post notes, that more than doubles the number of clemencies and pardons Obama has issued through the first 3 quarters of his presidency. As one colleague, Matt Ford, noted in December, Obama has been stingy with his mercy, even by the standard of recent presidents. Well, we got something to thank him for, don't we? Back to the story, though. Who have used their power more infrequently, though George W. Bush, previous president before Obama, issued only 11 commutations over 2 terms. Ron Forner also wrote an excellent analysis of Obama's pardons back in 2013, and that's a related story which I will be posting up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report, for your reading pleasure. President Obama today vetoed a measure by Republicans in Congress that would have blocked a government labor's agency rules designed to speed up the time it takes to unionize workers. The rules would shorten the period between a union filing a petition to represent workers and an election from the current median of 38 days to as little as 14 days. Employers will be required to share workers' names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses with unions. The National Labor Relations Board adopted the rules last year, and they are set to take effect April 14th of this year. The State Department says it can only find 4 emails sent between former Secretary of State and BS artist Hillary Clinton and her staff concerning drone strikes and certain U.S. surveillance programs, and those notes have little to do with either subject. She asks for a phone call in one, a phone number in another. She seeks advice on how to best condemn information leaks and accidentally replies to one work email with questions apparently about decorations. The messages also reveal Clinton used an iPad to email while Secretary of State, in addition to her BlackBerry. Despite her explanation, she set up a private email account and homebrew server while she was on the nation's top diplomat, so that she could carry a single device. The 4 emails were obtained by the Associated Press under a 2013 Freedom of Information Act request and offer one of the first looks into Clinton's correspondence at the State Department. It is the first time it has provided Clinton-related documents in response to several outstanding Freedom of Information requests, the first of which AP filed back in 2010. Meanwhile, Congressman Trey Gowdy sent a letter to Hillary Clinton's personal attorney formally requesting that the former Secretary of State appear before the House Select Committee on Benghazi no later than May 1st of this year to answer questions about her use of private email and a private server, as we mentioned in the previous story. This committee is left with no alternative but to request Secretary Clinton to appear before this committee for a transcribed interview to better understand decisions the Secretary made relevant to the creation, maintenance, retention, and ultimately deletion of public records, said Gowdy when he wrote to David Kendall. The committee is willing to schedule the interview at a time convenient for former Secretary Clinton no later, as I stated, May the 1st, 2015 of next year. So this report from the Daily Caller, a little note for people who want to get into the journalism industry: be careful on your editing, because sometimes little editing mistakes can confuse people so much. First we said May 1st, 2014. Now the Daily Caller says May 1st, 2015. Sorry to put guys a little confusion here, ladies and gentlemen. You don't know what year it's going to be. Some people may have thought it was 2016 of next year. You never know. Just a little word of advice from an old journalistic reporter who writes radio old-style way. And that's a wrap on the D.C. news tonight. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado tonight, let's welcome back Corey Evan tonight with tonight's Lawsuits Across America.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session. First item on the docket from Fox News. Arkansas lawmakers on Tuesday. Wait, that's not the right one. From Delaware Online, Delaware Congressman John Carney's eldest son is a defendant in lawsuits filed by the parents of a 19-year-old Clemson University student who died after an incident during a fraternity run.
The parents of Tucker Hips are seeking at least $25 million in 2 separate lawsuits, saying their son was a victim of hazing. During a run that began at 5:30 on September 22nd, 5:30 a.m. that is, Hips went headfirst over a bridge into a lake and was later discovered dead, according to the lawsuits filed in Pickens County, South Carolina. No, Jay, not North South Carolina. A wrongful death suit says that Samuel Quillen Carney, the congressman's son and a member of the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity, aka a load of Carney, who helped organize the run, did not attempt to locate Hips or determine his well-being after he went over the bridge into the shallow waters of Lake Hartwell. The lawsuit also alleges that Carney was deceptive with police investigating Hips' death. Others attempted to delete phone records, the lawsuit says. The lawsuits say that a long tradition existed among members of the local fraternity of requiring, pressuring, encouraging, and forcing pledges to jump off of one or more bridges over Lake Hartwell and swim to shore. Gotta love them and their dangerous little initiations.
Jumping off a bridge. What a load of Bridgegate.
Definitely. A federal judge Tuesday dismissed a whistleblower lawsuit filed by Brian Collins, the Orleans Parish prison guard who said he was fired after he gave photos of a bloody jail cell to NOLA.com. In a 17-page ruling, U.S. District Judge Sarah Vance stated Collins was acting outside the scope of his duties when he gave the photo to the civil rights group and NOLA.com after witnessing a 2013 attack inside the jail in which an inmate was stabbed 20 times. Collins provided the photo to the SPLC and the news organization after Sheriff Marlon Guzman's office issued a statement describing the 16-year-old victim's wounds as superficial cuts. Sounds like they're more than superficial to me. The attack made headlines just as officials for the jail and city were finalizing an agreement that would install federal monitors over OPP with lawyers for inmates who had sued over unsafe conditions in the parish lockup. In a statement emailed to press Tuesday, Guzman said he welcomed Vance's ruling. In his lawsuit, Collins said he made numerous reports to supervisors about dangerous conditions and inadequate staffing at the jail, reports he claims were ignored. He began passing info to the SPLC. When supervisors realized someone was leaking info, they made general threats and eventually threatened to fire Collins and filed criminal charges against him. Collins resigned from his job with the Sheriff's Department in October 2013 after an internal investigation revealed he had leaked the photograph and his supervisors told him he could not return to work. Hate it when someone in law enforcement tries to do the right thing and all the higher-ups pretend not to hear even one word of it.
It's called government BS.
That's what it's called. And 4 active duty and former service women filed a lawsuit Tuesday in federal court to stop the Defense Department from putting commanders in charge of cases involving sexual assault in their units, charging that commanders cannot be fair and impartial in such cases because they often know the alleged perpetrators are victims, the plaintiffs. An Army First Lieutenant stationed in Kuwait, a former Air Force technical sergeant, a former airman, and veteran soldier have asked the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia for an injunction to halt such appointments. Instead, legal officers outside the unit chain of command should adjudicate the cases, the plaintiffs said. The case represents a legal maneuver to institute what has long been proposed by Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York and is opposed by many within the Defense Department, to strip some commanders of the authority to decide whether and how to prosecute a sexual assault case. Representing the plaintiffs, Baltimore lawyer Susan Burke said the court can order the Defense Department to use its power under the Uniform Code of Military Justice to appoint unbiased adjudicators. The case's sole active duty plaintiff, Army First Lieutenant Selena Brown, was the alleged victim of sexual assault and harassment in a high-profile case involving the U.S. Military Academy rugby team in 2013. Baldwin discovered a cache of sexually explicit emails circulating among team members that discussed female cadets and other women. The emails eventually were turned over to West Point officials. The team was temporarily disbanded in mid-2013 as a result of the revelations and reorganized under a new coach. Disciplinary investigations were recommended, but no further punishment for those involved was discussed.
All right, looks like we may have lost Corey Evan. Hopefully we still have him.
I'm still here. Can you hear me, Jay?
Yes. Apparently we had
There we go.
give up in the satellite there, so Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll work on that. I'll grab your pinball hammer and hammer it out later. Zayn Malik, who quit One Direction last week, and his new producer wasted no time releasing the singer's first solo work, which was then deleted from the web Tuesday after fewer than 12 hours. The release and subsequent removal of
Just so you note, just in case, because we had that little silence there in the buffer, Corey Evan has called lawsuits across America good for the day. Correct, sir?
Yes. Anyway, the release and subsequent removal of I Won't Mind came after contentious tweets and counter-tweets between its English producer, Naughty Boy, and One Direction member, Louis Tomlinson. The counter-attempts began after Naughty Boy, born Shahid Khan, retweeted a video clip on Monday in which an unknown voice sings Naughty Boy Saved My Life, Zoddy Will Rise, set to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And speaking of Naughty Boy...
Twinkle, twinkle, twinkle here. I don't want naughty, naughty boy Justin Bieber on the air. Naughty, naughty boy Justin Bieber, I don't want him on the air. That's my little twinkle, twinkle song on the star. Knock that off the Star Hall of Fame, because Justin Bieber belongs in Canada, not the Hollywood Hall of Fame.
Or the Walk of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Miller throwing down a rap. Man, I never thought you'd do it, but you've surprised me. Good job.
Thank you very much. Now, Corey,
yes.
With the load of Bieber details, which he has to get done in 1 minute and 30 seconds because the exceptional conservative waits for no man.
Well, then let's get going then. Here's your bottom 10 comments from last night's Comedy Central roast of Justin Bieber. Number 10, Kevin Hart said, quote, Ebola patients hear about Bieber fever and say, I'm going to go ahead and ride this one out. Number 9, Jeffrey Ross. Is it true you dumped Selena Gomez, because she grew a mustache before you? Number 8, Ludacris. Quote, the Brazilian prostitute that claimed she was with Justin told the news that he was well endowed, and that prostitute would know because so was he. Number 7, Chris D'Elia. You have it all except love, friends, good parents, and a Grammy. Number 6, Natasha Leggero. Justin, Selena Gomez had to. You. Whoa. Number 5, Hannibal Buress. They say that you roast the ones you love, but I don't like you at all, man. I'm just here because it's a real good opportunity for me. Number 4, Ron Burgundy. Quote, this kid has spunk, moxie, and a few other STDs. Number 3, Shaq. Justin, as a father of 6, you have to straighten up, son. Last year, you were ranked the 5th most hated person of all time. Kim Jong-un didn't rank that low. And he uses your music to torture people. Number 2, Snoop Dogg. You bought a monkey. I mean, that monkey was more embarrassed than the one that started the AIDS epidemic. And number 1 from Martha Stewart. Justin, I'm sure it's great to have 60 million followers on Twitter, but the only place people will be following you in jail is into the shower. Ooh. There you are. Oh. We don't usually like Martha Stewart, but in this case, she has redeemed herself, at least for now.
For now. Thank God.
That's our entertainment report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow, hopefully with a little less controversy. But in the meantime, I'll send it back to Jay. Jay.
Thank you very much, Corey. And that is the Evan Miller Report on this Tuesday, March the 31st, 2015. Coming up, the National Weather Forecast with the BBC Met Office's Peter Gibbs. Peter, take it away.
Hello. The weather across North America is starting to shift around a bit more. The pattern's changing. It's been stuck in a rut, of course, for quite some time. That's the reason for the very cold winter in the east and the very warm winter across the west. But this big area of low pressure tracking gradually eastwards is going to start to shake things up a little bit. So eventually some warm weather arriving on the east coast, but not quite yet. A lot of dry, sunny weather to be found down that eastern side of Canada and the eastern side of the States as well. New York temperature just beginning to pick up, 10 Celsius, 50 Fahrenheit. By Wednesday. Across on the west coast, rather more unsettled. Some outbreaks of rain coming in from the Pacific. Those moving on to bring a bit of snow for the northern parts of the Rockies before clearing through. Some patchy rain getting down across Washington State into Oregon. Not getting down into California, though, where rain, of course, is desperately needed. The stronger sunshine picking the temperatures in Phoenix up to the low 90s. Down that east coast, plenty of sunshine to be found around the Great Lakes, down across to the east coast as well. Head a bit further south, though. And across Georgia, northern parts of Florida, prone to a few showers during Wednesday. Central and southern parts of Florida look likely to stay dry. Temperatures in Miami beginning to pick up again. But it's in New York we'll really see the temperatures picking up by Friday. Up to 18 Celsius, getting up into the mid-60s Fahrenheit. Haven't seen that for a little while, so signs of spring in the air. More rain to come, though, for Vancouver, Seattle and Portland. Dry and sunny for much of the time in Los Angeles.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.